So it seems the new Twisted and Warped Cultists have got a rules preview today. Let's see what these demon-riddled monstrosities can do. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today we're talking Accursed Cultists, and Games Workshop does seem to be stepping up the Chaos Codex previews. Hopefully there isn't all that much time to wait. In the meantime though, it's pretty interesting to see stat lines and abilities for whole new units, as we don't really know how these guys are going to work in game just yet. The models are some of the ones that they showed off in that big Warhammer Fest preview. The ones that they gave us pictures of were these three Accursed Cultist Torments, basically possessed cultists, where the possessing demon really seems to have got the upper hand and now seems to be the majority stakeholder in the whole symbiotic relationship, the cultists themselves sort of dangling off them in weird ways. Then there's another 5 more regular ones, more like regular guys with some hideous mutations going on, though at the moment they haven't really said whether or not you'd be getting all of these together in one kit, or whether they're going to have 2 different boxes, one for the torments, one for the regular mutants. In any case, they're all pretty fun models, but I think it might be kind of easy to kit bash your own if you wanted to go with your own particular flavour of mutation. In any case, in the recent rules preview we've gained a whole load of new details about them. First up, the Accursed Cultist squad is confirmed to be a troops choice, so it seems pretty likely that you could field a fair amount of these. I guess the limiting factor could be if they have something restricting the numbers of them, perhaps a bit like the Death Guard Poxwalkers or the Thousand Sons Zangors. It also seems kind of likely that they might not get OBSEC either. The cultists in Death Guard and Thousand Sons don't get that either, but they can still be pretty handy as a cheap unit for just sitting around on home objectives that are quite safe or doing actions. I feel that these guys are probably going to be a bit more expensive than your standard cultists though, as they actually pose some melee threat. The next thing is that they're confirmed to be a mixed unit. This was kind of implied already, and the leaks had already said that they would be, but basically they're confirming that we are indeed getting bigger torments mixed in with regular Accursed Cultists, so you could potentially go heavy on the big guys or the little guys, depending on whether you want more melee heavy lifting and more wounds. They're both rumoured to be toughness 4, which I guess would make sense if you're targeting them, just some are going to have more wounds than others. I guess that could be a stealth buff to their defense as well, as it means that you could potentially target some really big, high damage shots on the little guys, and maybe tank some small arms on the big ones. Next, when you've got this many spurs and tentacles, nobody wants to give you a lift apparently. They can't embark in transports, so Dreadclaw drop pods, rhinos and lamb raiders are out. Might be a bit of a shame for the big torments if they do wind up hitting quite hard, as they do appear to be just a little bit on the fragile side. Though to be honest, I can imagine if you're a rhino pilot, having a hold full of these guys probably wouldn't be what you'd want. Next up, and perhaps one of the most single cool previews, is that they're going to be a squad that automatically regenerates models. This is quite a big deal, and it means that each Accursed Cultist blob is going to be annoying on the board unless your opponent can actually finish them off. At the start of your command phase, you regenerate 3 destroyed mutants or 1 destroyed torment. Obviously, it's a pretty nice deal to be able to get extra models added onto the board for free. That means that these squads are always going to be fairly threatening. You can't just leave it on one model and think that it won't do anything. But perhaps more importantly than that, you can use those regenerated models for some nice shenanigans. It happens at the start of the command phase, so you could potentially chain them towards objectives and maybe even contest or capture them if you're in the right place. Or if you're looking to try and charge an enemy unit quite a long way away, then you could potentially set up regenerated models closer, and that would reduce your charge distance. Then if you move the unit directly towards that unit, between the base size and the unit coherency, you'd actually have reduced the distance quite a bit. It's really quite a powerful rule, and it perhaps incentivises building towards slightly bigger squads than you might do otherwise. If you can have half the squad killed but not all of them, then you're essentially going to be gaining free models. Finally, like the Poxwalkers, they ignore morale. Apparently life is cheap for the cultists, and I guess if you're possessed by a demon you've probably gone out of your mind anyway, so the enemy isn't going to scare you off quite as easily. Certainly doesn't hurt for expendable guys who might be being annoying and holding the enemy up, and force them to actually deal with all of them without them running away. Overall, it seems like broadly good news for the unit, though a bunch of fun rules might not necessarily save them if they're not pointed fairly efficiently. Perhaps the most exciting thing of the preview though was the stat line for these new Accursed Cultist Torments. In general they feel like fairly big threatening critters, though maybe aren't all that hard to kill. Their movement 6 inches, weapon skill and ballistic skill 4, strength 5, toughness 4, 3 wounds, 2d3 attacks, leadership 6 and a 6+ save. In combat they're going to be striking with hideous mutations much like the Chaos Spawn, hitting at strength user AP-2 and damage 2. Overall, they definitely have some similar vibes to the Spawn. They're a fair bit lower toughness, being only toughness 5, 3 wounds rather than 4, and not having a 5+ save. Plus, the Spawn have a mutated beyond reason table, which it doesn't look like these guys are going to get. With the stat line that they've got, it looks like they're probably going to be a bit cheaper than the Spawn, I'd guess. Maybe somewhere around the 15 to 18 point mark if I had to put a guess on it. Their damage is okay, though I wouldn't say massively outstanding. If you do manage to get 3 of them into combat, they kill around 2 Space Marines or 4 Guardsmen. Hitting on 4+ does limit them a bit. I guess the 3 wounds still means that they'll be a bit of a slog to get through. But I guess they are the sort of unit that if you point just about any gun at them, it will do decent damage. Otherwise, there's another couple of rumours out there for them. Apparently they're going to have a native leadership -1 debuff to nearby enemies, though that's not exactly confirmed yet, and the smaller mutants are apparently going to be hitting at strength 4, AP -1, and damage 1. I feel like the little guys are probably going to be in the region of 6 or 7 points perhaps, depending on how much they value their regeneration ability. In any case, looks like a fun unit. I suspect that they're still going to add up to be fairly cheap and expendable. Could be fun for bullying enemy units of a similar sort of caliber, and also the models are pretty fun. Finally, for the preview, they've given us a few more details about cultists in general, and 3 different support options that they're going to have in the Codex. First up, they say a bit about how cultists are going to work. The cultist keyword is going to apply to Accursed Cultists and the command unit as well, so they'll be able to make use of any synergies that happen for cultists, which will be limited to a few things like these here. The cultists aren't going to get legion traits, much in a similar way to Death Guard and Thousand Sons. I don't think they said whether or not they'd be getting objectives secured. Finally, the standard cultist unit is going to be renamed the Cultist Mob. They did mention that the options from the Blackstone Fortress set would be fieldable with them, but they didn't mention anything about the Cultist Firebrand, whether or not it was going to be an individual model or just a wargear choice within the wider unit. I'm kind of interested to see what they do with that one. I think both options would work really. Finally, we have this trio of supporting rules, 2 stratagems and 1 warlord trait from different legions. The first up is an unchanged one, cannon fodder from the Iron Warriors, 2 CP to make a cultist unit within 6 inches of an Iron Warriors infantry unit, essentially make the unit behind them untargetable. The only stipulation is that the cultist unit must be a viable target for the shooting unit. So usually if you have the cultists just strung out in front, they're almost always going to be able to see the cultists as well as the squad behind. If cultists do remain very cheap, it could be kind of critical for really big stacked chaos units. Maybe if Obliterators got really good, then it could be nice for them. Have a unit of very scary firepower models in the centre of the army, make them untargetable behind a whole load of cultists for a turn, and hopefully get 2 turns of maximal stacked firepower. Could be good for other hard-hitting, lower defense stuff, maybe like Havocs. For the word bearers, we've got Fanatical Zealotry. This appears to be an entirely new stratagem, and it makes 1 cultist unit hit very hard in combat. You nominate a cultist unit within 12 inches of a character. They get to reroll charge rolls and reroll hit rolls in melee until the start of your next command phase, so potentially 2 combats if they get bogged down. That one seems like it's going to be made for those Accursed Cultists. The Torments only hit on 4s, so that's basically a 50% extra damage boost, which is pretty good for 1 CP. I guess if anyone's going to have good synergy with these twisted, mutated cultist people, it's probably going to be the Word Bearers. I guess you've got to show the masses that their faith in the Dark Gods has been worth it, even if it's done these weird things to you. Finally, for the Alpha Legion, they've got a rather interesting Warlord trait that gives quite a powerful shooting buff. You put this on an Alpha Legion Warlord, and 1 cultist unit within 9 inches gets +1 to hit, and an extra AP -1 in all their guns. It's massively boosted from the previous version of this, which was an aura, but it only gave you extra AP on 6s to wound, which I think was just generally pretty dreadful. To be honest, I'm not sure how strong this is going to be overall. I'd be kind of surprised if cultists were in any way a decent damage dealing shooting unit, so even with these buffs they might well not be good enough. Still though, I guess if you wanted to try and make shooting cultists work, this does seem like a reasonable idea. Cultists do feel quite fluffy for Alpha Legion as well, who do often like to foment rebellions and act behind the scenes. In any case, let me know what you think of the new previewed rules. The Accursed Cultist unit looks quite fun. I think potentially the single most scary thing is the idea of regenerating 3 models every turn if you can't kill them all. I think that could be a pretty worrying prospect for the enemy. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. I'll certainly keep up the regular Chaos updates and review the Codex in full once we get it. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.